What can we do to constructively handle cross-cultural differences and cross-cultural disputes in the workplace?
Short answer is a lot. Long answer is it's delicate, it's difficult, it's nuanced, based from context to context, corporation to corporation, place to place. What you could do in India, you cannot do it in the US in some instances. I remember Alyssa giving a talk in Punjab, where I grew up. After 20 years of living abroad, I went back and I gave a talk with the judges of High Court, which is Supreme Court of the state of Punjab and Haryana. And I remember walking away from a podium where I was supposed to stand. While my talk was well received, I asked a judge afterwards, what is one or two things I should change, or something I ask people to improve further, right? And he very politely mentioned, he said, young man, everything was great. You used a lot of I in your opening. Instead of I, used you and they and yourselves. And second, you walked away, which was great, dynamic, wonderful. But here in our local culture, as you understand, stay behind the podium. So, you know, so it, so what is culture is unique. How do we change is unique. So I have a couple of tips to begin with, but let me go deeper into the question. The first two tips I have is flexibility. You need to know how to improvise based on different employees and people in your corporation, in your organization, in your workplace. It is not them who should change to you. It is you. If you are a good leader, you need to know how to connect with people differently. You need to know that people are at different places. You need to know that different people are at different places given the day, the time. It may not be culture. It may be personality. It may be gender. It may not be gender and personality. It may be the mood that they are in that day. It may be what happened in the morning in their home or what happened last night. You have to be the one who can improvise is my first tip. Number two tip I have is communication is the most powerful way of developing relationships. It is the most powerful way of reaching impasse. And it is one of the easiest ways in which we as human beings create misunderstandings. It is through break in communication, through underestimating the power of good communication, and through the use of under communication. We don't talk enough. We see somebody coming in late and we send an email. Hey, you were late today. Instead of walking over to that room and saying, everything okay? You see, it's the same communication done differently. And the entire day of that person is going to change based on, did you send an email or did you walk over? Right? Before a big event is announced for the corporation, let's say with 20 people, let's say non-government organization, NGO, and the email went out to the world, hey, our NGO is planning to do 3 things in Brazil, in China, and India. Well, does every person in your NGO knows that's going to happen? That's communication. It's not the intent of the person who's sending the email, could be the leader or could be somebody else, that was wrong. Intent could be perfect. The question, as usually we talk about, is impact of that action that took place. So those are 2 thoughts on which my answer is based, but let me give you a little deeper understanding. Let's understand a couple of things. Number 1, I said culture is omnipresent. This time I'm going to say culture is powerful. Understanding culture is not easy. It is complex. I've been having a rendezvous with culture for 17 years of my life in terms of academics and practice. But most of my life, I've lived in different cultures. I'm at least a bicultural, not multicultural person myself. And what my understanding, my empathy, what my growth, my upbringing in a totally different culture than where I'm right now. I'm living in California right now, within the culture of Pepperdine University. Very proud to belong to the Church of Christ community on campus, where I am the only that I know of, only Sikh living on campus. Imagine the culture, right? Where I grew up was totally different. I grew up in a majority Sikh culture where everybody else wore turbans. But I feel the same because I guess one connection we have is the religion. We grew up in a religious society. I live in a religious society. So it's fascinating. But look, India overall is so complex. I think Jeremy earlier mentioned it beautifully, that culture has subcultures. We cannot ignore regional cultures. So just a quick example, India has 28 states, 200 plus languages and dialects, 16 different ways of making a cuisine, 12 different styles of wearing a turban. When you say Indian culture, which one are you speaking about? So culture is powerful in that sense. That's the word I want to use. It's powerful. Spend some time understanding it. Don't read one article or read a book and think we become expert. Talk to people. People are the best representations of culture. You want to understand Brazilian culture? Go to Brazil. Spend time as per the local standards. Make a Brazilian friend. Ask him or her what culture is. Learn Portuguese. Understand how the language impacts the psyche, the heart, the art of people. It's an investment. It's a lifetime investment for some of us. I'm still learning about America. One thing that fascinates me is work culture. I'm still learning 16 years in how beautiful, how interesting, how delicate, how nuanced this whole point of work ethic in America is. When do we say no and when do we say yes? I'm still learning because where I grew up, you always said yes. And it was very hard for me to take a no because I always said yes. So let me conclude. One more point I want to add to how culture impacts work culture. You see, when you have miscommunication, my earlier point, remember I talked about flexibility and communication. When you have miscommunication, something new happens. Conflict or stress takes birth. When you have conflict, we need to understand a couple of things. Conflict takes our energy away. Conflict brings mistrust. Conflict creates boundaries. Conflict can be unpredictable and conflict create emotions. In all of those categories, emotion, unpredictability, boundaries, mistrust, and less energy, we tend to go into us and them. We tend to go into miscommunication mode. We tend to go into blaming than understanding. So the best tip I have is understanding these delicacies of conflict and culture together will bring you, I hope it brings us to this beyond my community, beyond my tribe, beyond my identity framework. I think Jeremy mentioned earlier, we need to look beyond who we are. We need to be really open to red and blue, to white and brown, to Asian and American. We need to open those minds up because the more boundaries, that's so easy to create. Color, age, politics, gender, religion, my town, my accent, my preference, my is so easy. It's difficult to include us. I will stop here. I have a lot more to add, but I'm mindful of everyone else's time. Thank you for this opportunity. Lovely to be with all of you.